Please head to the kids' table, James, my mother said, with that familiar condescending smile. We need the space here for Michael's business associates. I stood there holding my plate, watching as my brother's golf buddies and their wives settled into the premium seats at the main dining table of La Maison d'Or, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. At 32 years old, being directed to sit with my teenage nieces and nephews felt like a carefully orchestrated humiliation. Come on, little brother, Michael smirked, adjusting his designer tie. The kids' table is more your speed. You can tell them all about your little food truck dreams. I caught my sister-in-law Amanda trying to hide her snicker behind her wine glass. The crystal stemware caught the light from the chandelier above, a custom piece I had personally selected from an artisan in Venice 6 months ago. The adults' table is for successful people, my brother-in-law David added, not even bothering to lower his voice. People who understand fine dining and know the difference between cooking burgers and running a real restaurant empire. If they only knew that the wine they were drinking, a rare 1982 Bordeaux, had been added to the cellar on my specific instruction, or that the table they were sitting at was handcrafted in Florence based on my design specifications. But tonight wasn't the time for revelations. Not yet. I made my way to the kids' table, where my nephew Tommy was building a tower out of dinner rolls. Uncle James, he beamed. Did you bring any of those amazing truffles like last time? Not today, buddy, I said, settling into the child-sized chair. From this vantage point, I had a perfect view of the main table where my family continued their performance of sophisticated dining expertise. I heard the owner is incredibly selective about reservations, my mother announced to the table. We're so fortunate Michael's connections got us in tonight. I suppressed a smile, remembering the actual conversation with my general manager earlier that day. Mr. Kingston, your family's reservation has been arranged as requested. Would you like us to proceed with the special service modifications you discussed? The truth was, La Maison d'Or was just one jewel in my crown. Over the past decade, while my family thought I was finding myself and wasting time, working in various restaurants, I had been building Kingston Culinary Group. We now owned 37 high-end restaurants across 3 continents, with La Maison d'Or being our flagship location. My phone buzzed quietly in my pocket. A message from Marcus, my CFO, acquisition of the Singapore location completed. You now own the entire Asian Pacific restaurant group. Congratulations, boss. I typed back quickly. Perfect timing, family dinner in progress. They still think I'm the failure who can't afford an apartment without roommates. The irony wasn't lost on me. While they mocked my shared apartment, I actually owned the entire building. My roommates were my head of operations and chief innovation officer. We used the penthouse as an incubator for new restaurant concepts. Is this seat taken? A familiar voice pulled me from my thoughts. Jessica Chen, my head chef, stood there in her formal whites. Right on schedule. Chef Chen, what an honor. My mother's voice carried across the restaurant. Michael, isn't this the chef you were hoping to meet? I watched as my brother straightened his tie again, a nervous tell he'd had since childhood. Yes, we'd love to have you join us at the main table. I have some exciting business propositions to discuss. Jessica glanced at me, the slightest twinkle in her eye. We had rehearsed this moment. Thank you, but I'm actually here to speak with James. We have some urgent business matters to discuss. The silence that fell over the main table was delicious. I could practically hear their mental gears grinding, trying to compute why one of the city's most celebrated chefs would have urgent business with the family failure. James, my father finally managed. What business could you possibly have with Chef Chen? Jessica pulled out her tablet, making a show of pulling up some documents. The Tokyo expansion, of course. We need your final approval on the design concepts, Mr. Kingston. And the New York Times is requesting an interview about the Michelin announcement. I caught my mother's wine glass trembling slightly in her hand. Michael's face had gone from smugly superior to increasingly confused. The moment was building perfectly. I'm sorry, David interrupted, his voice dripping with skepticism. What exactly is going on here? I stood up from the kids' table, straightening my deliberately modest jacket. Jessica, would this be a good time to show them? She nodded, and with a subtle hand signal, the restaurant's lighting shifted. The large portrait wall, which had been covered by elegant curtains, was dramatically illuminated. There, in a series of sophisticated photographs, was the story of Kingston Culinary Group. with me prominently featured as founder and CEO. "Oh my God," Amanda whispered, her fork clattering onto her fine bone china plate. The photographs told the story perfectly. Me with world-renowned chefs at our restaurant openings, signing major acquisition deals, receiving industry awards. The final image, taken just last week, showed me accepting Restaurant Magazine's Restaurateur of the Year award. "I don't understand," my father stammered. "You work in food trucks. You live with roommates. You owner of this restaurant," I finished for him, "and 36 others across the globe. Those roommates you mock, they're my executive team. That food truck was our test kitchen for new concepts. And this table you're sitting at, I designed it myself." Michael stood up so quickly he knocked over his wine glass. The 1982 Bordeaux spread across the white tablecloth like a crimson confession. "This is some kind of joke. You can't possibly." Jessica smoothly handed him a copy of last month's Forbes magazine, the one with my cover story about revolutionizing the high-end dining industry. "Mr. Kingston has been quite busy while you weren't paying attention." The silence that followed was interrupted only by the soft music playing through the restaurant's custom sound system, a playlist I had personally curated. I walked over to the main table, now commanding the attention of everyone in the room. "You know what the funny thing is," I said, picking up Michael's overturned wine glass. "Every time you mocked my food service job, I was actually learning. Every restaurant I wasted time working in taught me something valuable. While you were playing golf and bragging about your connections, I was building relationships with the best chefs, suppliers, and restaurateurs in the world." My mother's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. "James, darling, why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me?" I asked quietly. "When I tried to discuss my business plans at family dinners, you told me to get realistic and stop dreaming. When I worked 18-hour days, learning every aspect of restaurant operations, you called me a disappointment." Jessica cleared her throat professionally. "Mr. Kingston, shall I have the kitchen prepare your usual tasting menu for the family?" "Yes, please," I nodded. "And Jessica, make sure they serve it with the story of each dish. I want them to understand exactly what we've built here." As Jessica left, I turned back to my family. Their faces showed a mix of shock, embarrassment, and dawning realization. The power dynamic had shifted completely, and they knew it. "Now," I said, taking a seat at the head of the table, "my table, shall we discuss what real success looks like in the restaurant industry? Or would you prefer I go back to the kids' table?" The look on their faces was worth every moment of doubt, every dismissive comment, every holiday spent pretending. As the first course arrived, a signature dish I had developed 3 years ago that now had a 2-month waiting list, I couldn't help but smile. Tommy's voice piped up from the kids' table. "Uncle James, does this mean you actually own all those cool restaurants you took me to?" "Yes, buddy," I replied, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Every single one of them. And you know what? Some of my best ideas came from sharing meals with you at the kids' table." The rest of the evening unfolded like a perfectly orchestrated service. Each course came with its own story, stories of risk, innovation, and success that my family had been too busy mocking to notice. By dessert, Michael's business associates were asking me for meetings, while my brother sat in uncomfortable silence. As the evening drew to a close, my father finally spoke up. "Son, we had no idea." "That was the point," I replied, signing the evening's check. "Not that I needed to. Sometimes the best success is built in silence, away from those who would doubt you. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a video call with our Dubai team about next month's opening." I stood up, straightened my jacket, and looked at my family one last time. "Oh, and Michael, about those connections you were going to use to get a reservation here? Next time, just call me directly, family discount and all that." As I walked toward my private elevator to the rooftop office, I heard my mother's voice, barely a whisper. "Our son owns La Maison d'Or." I smiled, knowing this was just the beginning of their education about who I'd become while they weren't watching. The morning after the Thanksgiving revelation, my phone exploded with messages. Family members who had ignored my calls for years were suddenly eager to reconnect. I sat in my penthouse office, overlooking the city skyline, scrolling through their desperate attempts at damage control. My dearest James, read my mother's message. We simply must have brunch to discuss this wonderful news. The country club has a lovely Sunday spread. I set my phone aside as Marcus, my CFO, entered with our morning reports. Your brother's been calling the restaurant's corporate office all morning, he said, sliding a tablet across my desk. And your sister-in-law Amanda has already posted on LinkedIn trying to establish a long-standing professional connection with Kingston Culinary Group. Of course she has, I replied, taking a sip of my specially imported Ethiopian coffee, a blend created exclusively for our restaurants. How's the Tokyo deal looking? Final paperwork is ready for your signature. But Marcus hesitated. Your father's law firm just reached out. They're offering their services for the international expansion. I couldn't help but laugh. For years my father had refused to even discuss my business plans, claiming they were too risky and beneath his firm's standards. Now suddenly international restaurant law was their specialty. The elevator chimed, and Jessica entered with a concerned look. Your mother's downstairs in the restaurant. She's trying to tell the staff she has special access as the owner's mother. How long has she been there? 20 minutes. She's already tried to change 3 table settings and suggested improvements to the menu. I stood up, straightening my custom-made suit, a far cry from the cheap shirts my family used to mock. Time to establish some boundaries. Jessica, please have the private dining room prepared. Marcus, bring me the Singapore contracts. Let's show them exactly what they've been dismissing all these years. Downstairs, I found my mother holding court at my usual table, speaking loudly about my son, the owner, to anyone who would listen. The staff, well-trained and professional, maintained their polite smiles, while shooting questioning glances my way. Mother, I said, my voice carrying the authority of someone who commanded a global restaurant empire. This isn't a social club. These people are trying to work. She jumped up, attempting to hug me as if the previous night's revelations had erased years of condescension. Darling, I was just helping your staff understand proper table settings. The dessert fork was slightly misaligned, and you know how important these details are in fine dining. The place settings, I replied coolly, were designed by Michael Laurent himself when we revamped the service standards last year. The same Michael Laurent who's been turning down your dinner party consulting requests for the past decade. Her face flushed. Behind us I could see several regular customers trying to hide their smirks behind their menus. They were used to seeing me do daily quality checks, working alongside staff, and handling every detail of the operation, while my family thought I was playing restaurant. Come with me, I said, leading her to the private dining room. Inside, Marcus had already set up our presentation materials. The wall-mounted screens displayed real-time data from our global operations. Is this about the brunch invitation? She asked, settling into one of our handcrafted chairs. The country club would be honored to. This is about establishing clear boundaries, I interrupted, pulling up our corporate structure on the main screen. Kingston Culinary Group is not a family business. It's not a hobby. It's a corporation valued at over $2 billion, with operations on 3 continents. Her eyes widened at the numbers scrolling across the screen. 2 billion. That apartment you mocked me for sharing. I own the building. Those roommates hold advanced degrees from Wharton, and I said. While you were bragging about Michael's middle management position, I was building this. Marcus handed me the Singapore contracts, and I continued. Every time you dismissed my little restaurant job, I was learning from world-class chefs. When you laughed at me for wasting time in kitchens across Europe, I was building relationships that would become the foundation of our international expansion. But darling, she protested, if we had known, you should have known. I cut in. I tried to tell you, all of you. Remember that dinner 3 years ago when I wanted to discuss my business plan? You and Dad left the table to take Michael's call about his golf tournament. The memory hung between us like a bitter aperitif. I pulled up another screen, showing the press coverage of our recent achievements. This is who I am now, Mother. Not the family failure. Not someone who needs the country club's approval. I'm the CEO of a company that's revolutionizing fine dining across the globe. She stared at the screens, perhaps finally seeing me clearly for the first time in years. What do you want from us now? Nothing, I replied simply. But I'll tell you what I don't want. No more showing up unannounced at my restaurants. No more trying to leverage your position as the owner's mother. No more LinkedIn posts from Amanda, trying to claim professional connections she doesn't have. Marcus silently placed a folder in front of her. This is a formal communication that will go to the entire family. It outlines appropriate protocols for interaction with Kingston Culinary Group and its staff. If you want reservations, you'll make them through proper channels like everyone else. But we're family, she protested. Are we? I asked quietly. Because last night, family meant sending me to the kids' table. Family meant laughing at my career choices. Family meant treating me as something less than the successful members of the clan. The silence that followed was interrupted by a gentle knock. Jessica entered with a coffee service, not the regular restaurant coffee, but my special Ethiopian blend. Your 3 o'clock call with the Dubai team is in 10 minutes, she reminded me, and the Michelin Guide representatives are confirmed for dinner. Thank you, Jessica. I turned back to my mother. I have a business to run. Marcus will show you out through the private exit. Please share the contents of that folder with the rest of the family. As she stood to leave, clutching the folder like a lifeline, she paused. Your father's firm. They could help with the international expansion. We already have legal representation, I replied. The same firm that helped us acquire 3 Michelin-starred restaurants last year. But you can tell Dad I appreciate the offer. After she left, Marcus raised an eyebrow. Harsh. Necessary, I corrected, checking my watch. How long until Michael shows up? Based on his calls this morning, I'd give it 2 hours max. I nodded, pulling up the Dubai contracts on my tablet. Have security ready. And Jessica, when he arrives, make sure he gets a good look at the chef's table, the one he tried to reserve last month when we mysteriously had no availability. As I prepared for my video call, I caught my reflection in the window. Gone was the hesitant young man they'd dismissed for so long. In his place stood someone who had built something extraordinary, someone who had turned their doubts into fuel for success. The Dubai team was waiting, and there was work to be done. After all, empires aren't built by dwelling on the past, they're built by focusing on the future, one carefully planned step at a time. And my next steps, they were already in motion, mapped out with the same precision I'd used to build everything else. Let the family scramble to adjust to the new reality. I had a $2 billion company to run. The following week brought exactly the storm I'd anticipated. Michael showed up at Le Mignon d'Or 3 times, each visit more desperate than the last. Today I watched on the security feed as he paced in the lobby, wearing what I recognized as a newly purchased designer suit. He's brought contracts, Jessica informed me, sliding a coffee across my desk. Your father's firm's letterhead. Apparently they've drawn up partnership proposals. I leaned back in my chair, observing my brother's nervous movements on the screen. How many times has he dropped your name to the staff? 7. Also mentioned being the owner's brothers to every customer within earshot. She smirked, including the food critic from the Times who's doing a piece on you. Perfect timing. I straightened my tie and pressed the intercom. Send him up. The private elevator delivered Michael to my office, and I watched his eyes widen as he took in the space. The wall of awards, the live feeds from our restaurants worldwide, the vintage wine collection that cost more than his annual salary. It was all strategically placed to make a point. James, he started, his voice carrying none of its usual condescension. You've done. This is incredible. Did you bring the partnership proposals? I asked, not bothering to stand. He fumbled with his briefcase. Yes, Dad and I worked all weekend on these. We think there's real potential for synergy between my business experience and your empire. I let the contracts sit untouched on my desk. Your business experience? You mean the middle management position you got through Dad's golf buddy? I've been there 6 years, he defended weakly, in the same position I noted. While in that time I've opened 17 restaurants, acquired 12 more, and increased our revenue by 300% year over year. The screens behind me displayed real-time data from our global operations. A notification popped up, Our Paris location had just received its second Michelin star. Look, Michael said, loosening his collar. I know things haven't always been great between us, but we're family, and families should work together. I pulled up a file on my tablet. Like last Christmas, when you told Aunt Sarah I was still playing with food trucks and advised her not to invest in my little projects. He paled. You knew about that. I know everything, Michael, including how you tried to poach my head sommelier last month with promises of a real career at your friend's wine bar. The silence was delicious, aged to perfection like the wines he pretended to understand. What do you want? He finally asked. I stood and walked to the window, surveying the city below. Nothing. That's what you never understood. While you were chasing status and connections, I was building something real, something earned. Dad's firm could really help with your expansion. We're already in negotiations to acquire the largest restaurant group in South America. I cut him off, using the same law firm that's handled all our deals, the one that actually specializes in international hospitality law. His face fell as the reality sank in. I wasn't the little brother anymore, the one who needed his approval or help. I was the one with the empire he now desperately wanted to be part of. Then why did you reveal yourself at Thanksgiving? He asked. Why now? I turned back to face him. Because it was time to end the charade. Time to show you all that success doesn't always look like your narrow definition of it. The elevator chimed again, and Marcus entered with our latest acquisition reports. Singapore numbers are in, he announced, then paused. Oh, sorry to interrupt. No interruption, I replied. Michael was just leaving. But the contracts will make excellent kindling for the fireplace in our new alpine resort. I sat back down at my desk. Give my best to Dad. And Michael, next time you want a reservation, call like everyone else. Family doesn't get special privileges here. After he left, Marcus raised an eyebrow. Harsh, educational, I corrected. How's the Tokyo property coming along? On schedule, but there's something else.
Or you should see.
He handed me a tablet. Your sister-in-law Amanda has been posting on social media, claiming inside knowledge about Kingston Culinary Group's operations. I scrolled through her posts, noting the carefully worded implications of involvement in our success. Have legal send her a cease and desist, and cancel their standing reservation at Limit. Already done. Also, your mother's been calling about the holiday charity gala. Ah yes, the annual event where she paraded her children's achievements. Previous years had featured Michael's golf tournament victories and Amanda's social circle connections. I'd always been conspicuously absent. Tell her we'll be handling our own charitable giving this year, I said. In fact, schedule a press conference. It's time to announce the Kingston Culinary Education Foundation. Marcus grinned. The scholarship program for aspiring chefs. $5 million in initial funding, full rides for students who, like me, see food service as more than just a stepping stone. I pulled up the foundation's draft website. Let's show them what real success looks like. Later that evening, as I did my rounds in La Maison d'Or's kitchen, I overheard two servers discussing Michael's earlier visit. Can you believe that's the owner's brother? One whispered. He didn't even know how to pronounce half the menu items. I smiled, tasting a sauce being prepared for the evening service. More garlic, I advised the chef, who nodded appreciatively. My phone buzzed. A message from Tommy, my nephew. Uncle James, is it true you're starting a cooking school? Can I apply? At least someone in the family understood what really mattered. I typed back, come by the test kitchen this weekend. Bring your appetite and your dreams. The empire I'd built wasn't just about proving my family wrong. It was about proving that success comes in many flavors. And mine, it was just beginning to reach its peak. 1 year after the Thanksgiving revelation, I stood at the podium of the International Culinary Awards, accepting Restaurant Group of the Year. The audience was filled with the world's top chefs, restaurateurs, and food critics. People who had recognized my vision long before my own family did. Success in this industry, I said into the microphone, isn't just about serving meals. It's about creating experiences, nurturing talent, and believing in yourself when others don't. In the front row, Jessica and Marcus sat alongside our executive team. Behind them, somewhat awkwardly, sat my family, not because they'd been invited, but because they'd bought tickets to the public event. Their presence was a reminder of how much had changed. The Kingston Culinary Education Foundation had just graduated its first class of scholarship recipients. 30 young chefs, each with a story similar to mine. Passion dismissed as frivolity, talent mistaken for indecision. They were now working in top restaurants worldwide, including several of mine. After the ceremony, my mother approached, clutching her evening bag like a shield. "Wonderful speech, James. Your father and I are so proud. Now I finished for her. You're proud now." The past year had been a lesson in boundaries. They'd finally stopped trying to leverage their connection to me after the cease and desist letters, and the viral incident where Amanda's social media claims about consulting for Kingston Culinary had been publicly debunked. "Tommy's doing wonderfully in the junior chef program," I said, changing the subject. "He has real talent." My nephew had become a regular at our test kitchen, showing the same passion for food that I'd had at his age. Unlike his parents, I made sure his dreams were nurtured, not dismissed. Michael approached, looking uncomfortable in his rented tuxedo. "The magazine said you're opening 50 new locations next year." 60, I corrected, plus the cooking academies in 3 countries. The empire had grown beyond even my initial vision. Kingston Culinary Group was now synonymous with innovation and excellence in the restaurant industry. We'd revolutionized culinary education, launched sustainability initiatives that changed industry standards, and created opportunities for passionate people who, like me, saw food as an art form. "I've learned something this past year," I said, addressing my family. "Success isn't about proving people wrong, it's about proving yourself right." I raised my glass, containing our exclusive house champagne, to believing in your vision, even when no one else does, and to finding family in unexpected places. Jessica appeared at my side. "Sorry to interrupt, but the Dubai team is ready for the video call about the desert location." "Excuse me," I said to my biological family. "My real family needs me." As I walked away, I heard my father say quietly, "We really didn't see it, did we?" No, they hadn't. But that was their loss. I'd built something extraordinary while they weren't looking, and now they could only watch from the outside as it continued to grow. In my office later that night, I looked at the framed photo on my wall, the kids' table from that Thanksgiving night. It reminded me that sometimes the best view isn't from the places people think are important, but from where you can truly be yourself. Tommy's latest text popped up. "Uncle James, I created a new dessert. Can I show you tomorrow?" I smiled, typing back, "Test kitchen at 10 a.m. Bring your appetite and your imagination." The empire I'd built wasn't just about restaurants anymore. It was about changing how people saw success, about creating opportunities for others to follow their passions, and maybe, just maybe, about showing one young dreamer that sitting at the kids' table doesn't mean you can't own the whole restaurant someday. The city lights twinkled below, as I raised a glass to the future, to all the dreamers who were told they couldn't, wouldn't, or shouldn't. Sometimes the best revenge isn't serving a cold dish, it's serving an empire of perfectly prepared ones. The end.